Welcome everyone to the Game Dev Discussion Podcast. This week we've got another Sony Santa Monica environment artist. We have Ivanna Liittschwager on. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, yeah, thanks for having me.
So there's been there's quite a lot I really want to talk to you about. But the first thing I want to start with is after I had Nate, the principal artist, on, he told me a very interesting story about you. Or started, should I say, about how you got into the industry and like your sort of development plan looked like, and your progression looked like. I'd like to hear that story in your own words, if you don't mind.
Sure, yeah. It's kind of like a unique story, I suppose. So, I met Nate at Noman, and he was my environment for games teacher. And I had only been working in 3D art for about 1 year, um, maybe even less when I started taking his class. And so basically, I my background was in illustration actually before coming to Noman. And I had gone there because I was not having any success in that department, but I really wanted to work in games. So I kind of made the transition from 2D illustration to 3D environment art for games. And so um, by this time, I had already been in school for quite a while before Noman, and so I was really sick of being in school. I really wanted to just like kick ass and finally get a job.
Mhm.
And so my time at Noman, I worked my freaking butt off on everything that I was assigned, and specifically in Nate's class, I had known that he worked at Santa Monica Studio, and I had just played the God of War 2018, and it blew my mind. And so, as the first day that I had his class, I knew whatever the assignment was, I just like need to put my all in. And so, basically, all of my classes, I did the bare minimum to pass. But for his class, I specifically made that old London scene
Mhm.
that is on my art station, and I put about 7 days a week, 13 hours a day on that project. And whatever feedback he gave me or what feedback my peers gave me, I would always implement. And so basically, come to the end of his class, I had come out with that piece, which I did not expect to look like that in the beginning. It at first it was just like a small facade of a shop front, and then it turned out to be a whole like city. Um, and he liked it and told me to apply. And it was funny because he asked, "How much time left do you have in school?" And I kid you not, I said, "I will drop out tomorrow if I got hired." And so we went through the process of interview, and he and the team didn't feel as if I needed an art test, which is also um, really rare, is what I've been told.
Mhm.
And I feel extremely lucky and grateful for that. That they were trusted me enough to not test me, and got the offer and I accepted, and I dropped out of school the next week. So I mean, it's not advice that I would give to every student, but like when an opportunity like that comes up, especially if that's like what you've been really wanting, uh, sometimes you kind of have to do it.
I guess the whole art testing though. I guess what Nate is watched you work on this scene. He's like it's I guess more than an art test. Like an art test is you getting an insight into like how they work, the timescales, following direction. I guess obviously being a teacher of Nomon is kind of he saw all of that in excess across the whole development of his project. So I guess an art test at that point is kind of redundant for you
Uh,
from their perspective.
yeah, absolutely. And I do want to shout out to Nick Reynolds. Also, he helped me quite a bit on that project as well. He was my texturing and shading for games teacher, and
Mhm.
he and Nate had worked together in the past at Santa Monica, and so I believe that they kind of like um, I guess talked to one another about like the project, and so maybe he also kind of said like maybe she doesn't need an art test, you know. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah.
Okay, so an interesting point on that then, on just art in general, I guess for you. You've done a lot of these sort of like these grey zebra scoops, and it's interesting because from my perspective, like observe the industry's we talk so much about proceduralism and all of these sorts of things, cool tech, and actually, it's not until I really spoke to Nate and I started to like sort of when I first got into the industry, it was like looking at people like Danny Cologne and he was
Hmm.
and Rogelio back when they were doing zebra scoops. And I kind of forgot about that when I was, going through the motions of industry and looking at procedural tech and stuff. And like speaking to Nate, and he's like, "Oh yeah, this is how we work." It kind of UE5 and everything brought the zebra side of stuff back to the forefront.
Hmm.
Now, it looks like from your portfolio, like the gray scoops are kind of like a piece of art you just enjoy making. It's not necessarily, oh, okay, I'm trying to show off this particular workflow for this particular reason. It's you making art for the sake of art almost. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Because that's the one thing that with game art is like when you really want to actually show off the artwork, you have to do, low poly, bakes, texturing, lighting, setup, and scene. It takes so long, and um, with those pieces, I kind of just like want to show that like you can just make really cool art in ZBrush and not have to worry about all the extra stuff.
Is does that not like isn't that quite scary though? It's like, oh yeah, this is it's you being able to make art for the sake of art and all the annoying little extra stuff you have to worry about. And then you hear some of the, like the murmurs coming out of UE5 and like the future of games, I guess in general, is like, oh yeah, we're gonna take all that annoying stuff out of the equation. And it's like, oh shit, this is actually like we're moving closer to this.
Yeah, so I recently rewatched the tech demo for that, and it seems so unbelievable to me that that is like going to be a possibility in the future. Um, I'm not sure like how close it is for AAA games, because I can't even imagine trying to UV unwrap like a 33 million model or something. So I'm not quite sure like if that is the future immediately, but it is exciting that we can do that for like student projects or personal artwork with
Mhm.
UE5.
Yeah, because there's a lot of stuff. I mean, even in Unreal 4 now, like that, we'll never see a AAA production in the light of day because it's just, it's too expensive.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, but what about the end of a console generation? Like, so the stuff I'm seeing in UE5, I'm like, I reckon we'll start seeing some of that, not all of it, but some of it midway through to the last quarter of this like console generation. Like, I mean, look how much we've come from the beginning of the PS4 to the end of PS4. It's like
Hmm.
mind blowing. And seeing that, I'm like, that's actually kind of terrifying. Like that's the bit that scares me is how quick the tech can move.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I did see something on Twitter recently. Someone just posted, um, kids in the future playing these video games are not going to know what a loading screen is. And I was like, holy crap, they're right. That is mind boggling.
Yeah, it's like when I my first console was a PlayStation 1 and like I see the memes of oh yeah, getting a cartridge and blowing in a cartridge. I'm like, I can't relate to that. Like I guess I had the Game Boy cartridges, but you never really had the same issue. And I'm like, oh god, that's gonna be the same for these guys. They're like, what are discs? What do you mean scratching on discs? What
Oh
the fuck
my
does that even
god,
matter?
yeah. It's crazy. And it's crazy that like uh this tech is just happening so freaking fast. It's mind-boggling what we're going to be seeing in I don't know, 10 years.
But it's what's made me so happy is what I was talking to some guys about this today. Like I've never been so. I think like the game dev industry is so happy to have something like Fortnite around,
Mhm.
just for the likes of Epic just to be able to throw money at things and like
Mhm.
actually drive the industry forward. and like majority of it we have to thank Fortnite for because it generates an absurd amount of money for them to be able to do this.
Mhm.
And yet when I speak to like the sort of gamer industry, so people who are not savvy about how the behind the scenes work, they're like they're cursing Fortnite like, oh, it's so crap, it's this that, it's the other, general gamer opinions. And I'm there like, okay, I don't like this game, but Jesus Christ, I'm glad it exists. I'm so happy for it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
There's something else actually. It came up recently. I'm seeing like stuff on LinkedIn about this whole notion of juniors looking for jobs and they're getting frustrated because like the junior CV job description says, oh, you need like 3 years of relevant experience, and then like them posted about how nonsensical and ridiculous it is because I need experience to get experience. And I
Mhm.
feel like there's a bit of misunderstanding, to be honest, because the way I see it, when it says 2 years of relevant experience, that's 2 years of making good standard art, not necessarily 2 years of being in the industry. And like, I mean, you're an example to this yourself. Like, produce good art and you get a job, like irrelevant of whether you've had previous studio experience or not. Good art wins over everything, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for I definitely feel like those descriptions are kind of to scare people away from not applying, and
Hmm.
it kind of like can seem like a system to like weed out the weak and like bring out the strong or whatever. But
Hmm.
I've definitely been told that, you know, those descriptions are not necessarily like you don't have to ship a game. That those requirements would be like so difficult to hire people if you
Yeah.
require somebody to have 3 years of industry experience and ship a game. Like, that's crazy, especially for, like, a junior contract position. That's ridiculous. So I do feel like when it says, relevant experience, I do feel like that does include school or personal
Hmm.
projects or freelance, whatever. And even if you do have that experience and your art may not be like totally up to par, that is another issue. So it really is like what you show in your portfolio. And you don't need 10 amazing pieces. You I got hired off of that one piece,
Hmm.
and that's all it takes. It really depends on like, the quality that you show in uh one piece of artwork.
It You know what? Is the sooner that penny drops for a lot of people, I think the sooner they get where they want to be. I mean, I know I went through this. Like, I was producing a lot of art, but it was not of good content. And then I dropped like, okay, let's do one. Like, actually make an effort with one environment. Do it. Stuff starts looking up, and it's like, oh yeah, just that one scene to show that I can do it is all you really needed. And I'm observing social media and stuff at the moment, and seeing a lot of kind of what's the word? I don't want to say being disenfranchised, but like this frustration. Like, oh, I can't get in, I can't get in, and I'm like, yeah, it maybe just let's just triple check your portfolio before like cursing the industry because talent gets hired. I don't think I see anyone who is like exceptional talent not be able to get some sort of work. Like, it wins above nearly, apart from being if you're a douche to work with, your reputation gets around quick. It's a very small industry, um,
Absolutely.
which scares the life out of me. Actually, it's
It is very scary. I can't tell you how many like peers that I've had in classes that I now work with. And
oh really?
oh yeah, like you know, uh we're starting to hire quite a bit of people, and um there are a lot of ex-Nomen students. And I've had classes with them. I've maybe talked to them a few times, like, and your reputation at school can also, follow you to work,
Hmm.
especially since like this industry is so small. You are going to be working with people you went to school with. So,
Is so this is I haven't actually discussed this with anyone, and you just it just reminded me. I guess there's like it's hard as well for the people in the industry because when like you said, reputation could follow you from school. Now, obviously people grow, people change, and when you're at school, you're still a kid. Like, I
Absolutely.
can't remember who said it. Someone said you're a kid until you're in your 30s, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'm still a child then, which I could probably see some truth in.
Mhm.
But it's like, oh, okay, this guy was like an arrogant prick. I mean, if anyone knew me at college, like they'd be like, Jesus, that guy was difficult, and you learn from that, and you have to learn to change, or you don't last very long in this industry. And that's something I have thought about. I was like, oh yeah, that guy was a dick to work at a school. Like, he probably still is. It's like, well, it's been 5 years now.
Mhm.
Like, there's that element too, isn't there? Like, people can learn and change. It's just very hard to tell, I guess.
It is, especially if you don't, have contact with them. Um, but I mean, like, that's the unfortunate thing is that, like, uh, if their name did come up, that's like the first thing that you think of is,
Hmm.
that person may have been a dick or something. But it is important to kind of give people the benefit of the doubt, especially in interviews and such, because that's where you can really tell a person's personality. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, people can change for sure. Um, it is hard to kind of like weed them out though.
One of the fun ways when I had my interview in our studio, and actually when we then interviewed further people, we always used to go. They used to come to the studio, have some lunch, and we'll go like we'd have the interview at a bar, like a pub or something, like an English pub, and try to get them out of the studio, just try to get them to behave a bit more like themselves. Because,
Hmm.
like you said, like it's at the interview you get to know somebody and like see what they're like, and by that point you probably made the assumption they're a good artist. They wouldn't be there otherwise.
Hmm.
But trying to get people to be themselves and like just shed that interview kind of suit they're wearing and be themselves is very difficult. But it's like I'd say probably the most important part of an interview, I guess.
Yeah, that actually happened to me in my interview with Santa Monica. Is I had my interview, um, and it was like I was there for maybe like 3 hours, and the interviews went by pretty quickly. But then it was around lunchtime, and they asked me, "Do you want to just go out to lunch with us?" And I was like, still super nervous, and but I was like, I was hungry, so I was like, sure, why not? So but I knew that like this was also in a way a test, but they do want to
Mm.
see like how you are outside of like the stressful interview stuff. And it is really easy to like come out of that shell at lunch. And I had been told before that by some of the people who interviewed me that they would do that to some people, and that's when people come out as either really nice or really unpleasant.
Really? Did they
Hmm.
tell? Just out of curiosity, did they give any examples of how people can be unpleasant? Because I'm trying to imagine, like, out at lunch with somebody, how you can, like, what you could say to really stick your foot in your mouth. Like, did they? Is there any examples you can think of, or like you've heard of for that?
Let me think. Possibly not like any specific thing that they said, but I
Hmm.
can imagine it would be something like they come off as arrogant or um, not very modest, maybe, or they would
Hmm.
say they would just like let something slip that
Yeah.
they maybe joke around with their friends and maybe just not appropriate in a professional setting. So things like that stick for sure.
Yeah, I do think of there. Yeah, that's the one which I always. There's only one example I can think of in my head, and it was always a joke you'd make behind closed doors with your very close friends, and like even if you found it funny, like in like in that workplace, and like it was funny or whatever, it's like, hmm, this is the most polite you're ever gonna be, like at this interview,
Uh-huh.
and we're starting here. Okay, what does downhill look like from here?
Exactly. Exactly.
Was Sony your first interview?
Yes. Sony was
Not bad, not bad.
my first everything. It my first job, my first interview. Um, Thankfully, not first art tests. But I see the art tests that we send out, and I honestly like I would know I would be nerve wracked doing that thing. But yeah.
So what's like? Let's just talk through this interview. Like, you obviously you know Nate.
Hmm.
Um, he's been your teacher up to this point. He told you to apply, so you know, like, okay, you've got that confidence of okay, at least he would have told me to apply if I'm at least half good.
Mhm.
What does this interview look like for you? First interview, you're Sony Santa Monica. Obviously, it's one of the studios that inspired you to be in the industry.
Mhm.
What does this all look like? What's going through your head?
Sweating a lot and not sleeping. Um, I was just extremely nervous about, um, not knowing the answer to a question,
Mhm.
and, because, I'm a student, I don't really know all that much. And I'm sure in that project I made things wrong. And so that is what I was really afraid of, is answering a question wrong or just not knowing at all. And um that did actually happen, is they asked me a question and I had no idea how to answer. And I literally just said, I'm not sure, but I would figure it out. And that is something that they liked, which was interesting.
Yeah,
So it's like, you gotta be truthful, and that's, like, not what I expected. I expected to, be grilled to the bone about technical questions and, um, just a lot of, like, game dev questions, and yeah.
that's literally the most. I think that's the biggest turn off in an interview you can have, like when you're interviewing somebody and you ask a question and they kind of ramble through and they throw words into the sentence which sound like they belong in the sentence, but you're like, you don't have a clue what you don't know what you're talking about. And it's like it's humility, isn't it? It's being able to
Yes.
say, okay, you know what, I don't know, but like you said, I'll learn it.
Yes.
That's the perfect answer in that situation. And I've heard people that experience like tell me about their interview experiences, and it's like, yeah, it went all right. They asked me a question about this, and I didn't really know the answer. And I'm like, okay, what did you say? Oh, well, I kind of just talked about like something else. And I'm like, okay,
That's not good.
probably best just to hold your hand up and just because they probably don't expect you to know. The thing is with this as well is you'll ask questions which juniors probably shouldn't know, or at
Mhm.
least like it's rare for them to know. And then it's like, okay, can this person hold their hands up and be okay with being an idiot in this situation and be open to learning? And it's like, oh, they can't. Okay, but these are the sort of questions I think people don't understand come up because what they think is, like you said, they're going to get grilled and it's like, a million questions coming at you quick fire, and it's not. It's like these little questions where it's like, okay, can this person say they don't know? No, they can't. All right, well, imagine what it's going to be like to work with.
Yeah, because there are some people that, are too afraid to ask questions or may seem, stupid for not knowing. And
Hmm.
those people working with, they suffer in silence. And that's like the number one thing that you really don't want to do, is because you can be spending all this time trying to figure something out on your own where you could just ask the person next to you and they would have the answer for you immediately. So asking questions and not knowing things, especially as like a new student or like a junior person, it is so encouraged to ask questions constantly, because you're there to learn, and you have the opportunity to learn from all these senior artists and these amazing people. And so you want to kind of like pick their brain.
Hmm. I mean, this might be just me thinking this, but I've always felt like it's better to over communicate than under communicate. Like
Absolutely.
it's easy to tell someone to shut the fuck up. It's really hard to pull answers out of someone who doesn't want to talk,
Exactly.
and it can get frustrated. It is one of the most frustrating things to do is have someone in your team where you're like, "Hey, like, you're all right? Yeah, I'm fine." And you're there watching, like, "Okay, I know you're not. I can see you struggling. Like, are you sure you're okay? Yeah, fine. Yeah, I'm okay." And it's like, okay, how the fuck do we get to the situation of actually helping this person? Whereas if someone's
Yeah.
like asking too many questions, it's like, I think you should like work this one out for yourself. Like easy, that with like that's it. They can go away and do their thing.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it's I think people were yeah, it's weird how actually that mindset is. People are kind of they're worried about being bothersome without realizing that's kind of the job of being like when you're new to the industry is to find out all the information so that you can just do your job. But
Mhm.
it's people don't really understand that, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely something that's not talked about, is it's okay to not know things.
Yeah, I think the one which got me was I was in the Unreal Engine and like I was screen sharing like some work. This was recently actually. I didn't know that when you press F11 it maximizes the viewport. I've always clicked, I've gone up to the menu and gone full screen and done that. And I was screen sharing, I was kept going back and forth between the two. And one of my colleagues was like, Alex, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just maximizing to get a better view. And like he's like, you know, dude, if you press F11, I'm like, no, I don't touch the F keys, they scare me. And he's like, okay, just press F11 for me. I'm just like, oh my god, I've wasted. I mean, I've been doing this
Yeah.
for like, oh god, how long have I been a counterplay now? Like 6, 7 months. I've been doing this, and in every stand up doing this process, and it wasn't until recently. He's like, yeah, dude, just press F11. It's been painful to watch. I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah, it's funny because sometimes they'll, like, kind of, like, see you struggle, but they'll let you struggle, and then they'll just kind of say something, you're like, "Oh, why didn't you just say something?"
I should have just. Like, it's that kind of situation. Like, oh, is there a quicker way to do this? And the funny thing is, actually, I don't even need to ask a colleague. You know what? If I'd have googled that, I probably would have got a good answer.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Actually, so just want to circle back to social media for a minute because there's something I've seen recently, and we spoke briefly about it on off air, and it's actually very frustrating. Is that it's kind of become normal as devs are more and more like active on social media, showing off their artwork, all this sort of good stuff. It's become quite prominent when gamers see something they're not happy with to just hurl abuse at devs. You know, we've seen it recently with Spider-Man by just tweaking the way Spider-Man looks a tiny little bit.
Mhm,
We've seen devs getting, you know, abuse hurled at them. We've seen it with Last of Us.
mhm.
Where the fuck did this start? This has never been normal. It only seems like it's been the past year or two. Like
Yeah, yeah.
this has started happening.
Yeah, I don't know when exactly it just started, but I feel like it became more, prominent with the release of Last of Us 2, and I never really started noticing until that game came out, and then now I'm seeing it everywhere, you know, with
Mhm,
Spider-Man and other games, and it's just like what I don't understand the purpose of it, and it's like
mhm.
we don't have control over all of the decisions and the creative decisions. I I make rocks and I don't have any control over this. Why are you screaming at me? So, yeah, I have no idea where it came from. It's really awful to see.
It's the fact that it's creeping into stuff like our station. I mean, one of my so there's this. I've been hanging around with a new group of people on Discord from like the club, and one of them did some work, some stylized environment work, posted it on our station. Great art drop, and I got comments. Oh, environment looks good. I mean, your character, you should really fix up your characters and your logo. And I'm
I
like,
saw that.
yeah, and I'm like, okay, dude, like, okay, one, you this isn't Twitter, so I'm gonna assume you have some sort of artistic understanding of how a game's freaking made.
Mhm.
But I was like, okay, Twitter's one thing. I expect a certain level of people being moronic on social media. Our station, I'm like, what the fuck? Our station is like, I panic about anything I say on our station because it's like, okay, this is professional.
Yeah.
Can't, you know, utmost professionalism. Don't swear. I mean, I love to swear. Even at our station, I won't swear. And then I saw this, and I'm like, okay, what the fuck's going on here? This is crazy.
Yeah, I think I that also happened with the art dump with Last of Us 2 is people,
Hmm.
were started really like smashing hate on the character artists for Abby specifically. And it's like if you look
Mm,
at the comments, I unbelievable. But um when this started happening, I have no idea, but it's crazy to think that these people are trying to, get themselves out there, or they're already out there in the industry and they're showing publicly how they, what they think about things. And it's
mhm,
like in a way it's it's I won't say it's good, but you can see people's true colors, and you can now
mhm.
like kind of put a name to them if they're trying to get a job, and you're like, I don't want to work with this person. They've like smashed hate on ArtStation, on someone's artwork. But I think
It,
ArtStation, sorry, I think
yeah, Karen.
ArtStation is um, starting to become more of like a fan base thing, kind of like how DeviantArt became.
Mm.
But I'm not sure how that started happening.
So just so I'm clear, you mean like there's more people who are not necessarily professional artists or even want to be professional artists, they just want to look at professional art?
Correct.
Okay. Hmm. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I can agree with that. I've seen that. I mean, ArtStation is also kind of a weird thing because I've seen the sort of the retort the response to that, the whole like critiquing Abby in particularly on ArtStation is, oh, it's just critique, who cares? I'm like, okay. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of Abby. I'm like, although I like her character design, not necessarily complete on my street, but then I'm like, there's places to do this, and there's
Mhm.
ways of doing it. Like, I don't know why. I've always felt like giving critique on ArtStation is kind of unsavory, just because it's kind of the person's done. You don't put on ArtStation unless it's blogs. But when I
Mhm.
put it on ArtStation, I'm calling it done. I'm finished. I don't want to look at this anymore.
Mhm.
To then offer critique, I just kind of feel like it's not the place to do it. So whenever I see that response of, "Oh, I'm just giving critique, and you should be welcoming of critique," I'm like, "Yeah, but there's places to give critique, and like if people's not asking
Yeah, it's
unsolicited
not
critique, it's a very
asking.
fine balance."
Absolutely. Like, this is done. I'm finished. I want to show you guys. I think it's cool. This is it. People aren't looking for critique. And if they are, they will say it in their description. And I feel like maybe feedback or critique like that is more appropriate in DMs rather than openly in comments, you know?
Well, this is the funny thing. I was like, so I was speaking to we were talking about this, and I was like, we are talking about unsolicited critique. And I was like, okay, like the problem is there's grey areas as well because, for example, there's a few times where like a student's posting work and they're not directly asking for critique in a Discord or something, but I'm like, you know what? Hey, I know you didn't ask, but I think you're missing this particular thing.
Mhm.
Now, there's a difference between a student trying to learn the industry and Frank Zhang, the fucking a legendary character artist, does
Mhm.
not need you to go, hey, maybe you missed this thing.
Oh my
Like,
lord.
Students doing just fine. He's the lead character artist.
Yeah.
He's doing okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, like, it's definitely the wording is important. You don't wanna come off
Mhm,
as, like, I don't know, uh, unsavory when giving
mhm.
feedback, but also it's just like, read the room maybe a little bit. Yeah, it's crazy to see some of that on, lead character artists or lead artists on ArtStation. So,
Yeah, you just don't. It's like it was very shocking for me when I first saw that. I have to admit, I'm kind of just looking at it going, "Huh, this is a thing now." Right,
mhm,
there's another thing to add to the list. Um, yeah, it's actually it's funny you mentioned the whole like there's more I guess fans on our stations. I never really thought of it like that because I've always thought of our station as okay, this is for my peers
mhm,
and everything else is for everyone else. But yeah, I think you are right. I think there are a lot more people like that on our station. Um, but okay, we're going to segue just a little bit.
mhm,
There's actually it's the main reason I wanted to speak to you. Main reason for inviting you on. I want to talk about work life balance a little bit. Now, I before this podcast we haven't really spoken. But I do follow you on social media, and I love the fact to see do a lot of gym work, you do a lot of archery, and it seems as if from the outside looking in, you have a lot of hobbies and you do a lot more. You're a lot more than just a games artist.
mhm,
Um, I just want to talk about that a little bit because it's like it's healthy work life balance, right? Like you're not a one dimensional artist. Like you have all these different aspects to your life.
mhm.
Is that something that like started before your like formal education, or is it something you've like had to be conscious of as you enter the game industry? How did you cultivate this lifestyle?
So, uh, it's kind of like been, I do rock climbing and I've been doing that for about 8 years. And that's just
Hmm.
something that I've had to incorporate with my life, with whatever I do. So that just so happens to be uh, trying to balance that with um, being in the industry. But s- activities such as like archery, where I just recently picked that up, um, it's I like to try and do things that can be, um, I guess, a little nerdy in some sort of way. Like after playing The Last of Us and like Horizon Zero Dawn, where you know have a bow. I'm like, you know what? That is something that I can do in real life. And so that's kind of like where I would pick it up. And you know, there are things in video games that I find that you can do in real life now, and it's really interesting to kind of experience those things and balancing that with you know being a game artist is difficult, but it's easier now that since you know you have a full time job uh, and you have time off, whereas you're a student you really don't have time off. So
Hmm.
now that I had been a student for so long, um, now that I actually have designated time off, I have time to kind of like dedicate that to hobbies and give more time to myself and my mental health and get outside and do things. Whereas before, I would just be sitting at home and either doing art or playing video games. It's just constant cycle. And you kind of need time to like breathe with yourself and work on yourself and your hobbies. So I do think that's really, really important.
It's, you know what, that's, yeah, that's the biggest thing I noticed is that it's kind of like you transition from the student identity to the, okay, professional identity very seamlessly. It's like, okay, as, because you're right, as a student, it is just like nose to the grindstone, graft to get that job.
Mhm.
And yeah, you get the job. It's like, great, okay, now I need to look after myself on the side.
Mhm.
Um, what actually there's some, okay, this is not game out related. This is like just nerdy gym stuff.
Mhm.
I see you do a lot of like heavy, you do like deadlifting, heavy lifting.
Mhm.
From a purely just curiosity point of view, how does that kind of training? And I'm sorry if anyone listening who's like game artists, but this is like I don't get to the opportunity to talk gym stuff very often.
Mhm.
How does what type of training are you doing like when you're doing like weights? Because I'm like with rock climbing, you obviously you don't. It's not about just putting muscle mass on because then that's weight and it makes obviously the rock climbing more difficult.
Mhm.
But I see you doing deadlifts. So like, what is there any like what's the thought process behind the gym training right now?
Well, in COVID, unfortunately, I've had to transition to working out at home. But
Hmm.
pre-COVID, um, I kind of like to have a balance of like my full body. So like rock climbing is a
Hmm.
lot of upper body stuff, and so there will be you know rock climbing, and um, then I'll have like a few moments afterwards to just transition to work on other stuff that I know my body was not working out on with rock climbing,
Hmm.
which would be, you know, legs or core or whatever. And so that's kind of like my whole fitness routine.
Oh, okay, that makes sense then. So yeah, like rock climbing, like I said, upper body, back, shoulders, chest, and then when you finish, like okay, I haven't worked my legs, I haven't worked my glutes or anything. Okay, I'll
Yeah,
do
exactly.
do 20 minutes on that. Okay, interesting. And it's just like, and I guess then that's kind of just maintenance stuff. You're not trying to smash PBs or anything like that.
Oh no. No, no. I just kind of like do it to make myself feel good about like the workout that I've done. I don't try and like have personal records or whatever and try and deadlift 300 pounds or whatever. You know, that doesn't really matter to me.
I wish I could have that mindset. Yeah, going from like professional sport where like it's all about numbers. That's all they care about. It's like
Exactly.
measuring numbers and comparing you.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, don't need to do that anymore. Okay, it's really hard to find that motivation in gym now for like not chasing them numbers.
Yeah.
Um, but okay, so let's just come back to the archery for a sec. How like how does that affect you when you're sort of interacting with people? Because the reason this conversation, I wanted to have this conversation was I was thinking about it when I started hanging around with a few different discords, and it turns out that I mean I'm guilty of this. I spend a lot of time. All I do is talk about and work on the games industry, and I was like, okay, I quit sport, fair enough. And we got into a conversation, and it's like all I talk about, or I find myself talking about, is art and game art and anything connected to game art. Does the fact that you're doing other stuff like your rock climbing, your archery, like does that help when you get into just general day to day conversation outside of your game industry circle? Help
Yeah.
with the whole aspect of interacting with people.
Yeah, absolutely. The I have a separate Discord channel with some of my coworkers, and we will talk about doing things together. And well, this was before COVID, of course, but
Mhm.
we would try and find activities to do together to kind of like we like to hang out with each other. We work together every single day. Let's do something that is not game art and not
Mhm.
talk about game art, because that is just like our constant state of mind. And having activities like archery or rock climbing or even hiking and just doing something else is really refreshing, especially if it's with the people who you spend every day with in game art. And it's nice to see that side of people, um, where it's not just like constant work.
And that's a I'm guessing you're all having to make a conscious effort of that, of not falling into talking about work or just
Yes.
game out in general.
Yeah, sometimes I mean of course it'll come up, but we definitely try to like not like talk about work, um and just kind of enjoy life as it is, since game art is just like has been our lives for so many years.
Mhm. Hmm. You know what? Maybe that might be a useful idea with me and my friends. I mean, they're probably listening to this and saying, "Like, shut the fuck up, we ain't doing that." But I could try. Um, so with your colleagues, then, like, is it actually? Let's come back to one of I wanted to touch on is you were inspired by God of War. That's what inspired you to get into the industry,
Mhm.
and you're now working at Sony Santa Monica. You've recently announced God of War sequel, which, by the way, congratulations on.
Mhm.
When you joined, was there like this kind of pressure? 'Cause it's not just the pressure of, oh, my first AAA games job. It's like first AAA games job at the studio, which inspired me to get into this industry in the first place. Was there any for you personally? Where's your mental headspace? Was it like, oh, there's a pressure on yourself, or was it kind of like, no, this is dream come true, happiness instead? What was the reaction?
Both, I would say. I was definitely starstruck with some of the artists, and because I knew who they were, I've seen their art, and now I'm working with them. That is, extremely intimidating. And um, at first, I thought, "Holy shit, how am I going to work with these people? Like, how am I going to be up to par with them creating artwork? And like, what is my art going to look like next to theirs? Like, how am I
Mhm,
ever going to get on their level?" And there's like an insane amount of pressure, especially on my first day. I remember them showing me, um, the engine and whatever. I was just like, I'm never gonna learn this. This is crazy. Like, there's so many things, and there's so many little things. How the fuck am I gonna do this? Um, but you also are like, I'm working in my dream job. I'm finally here. I'm going to put all of my effort into this. Like, I am going to learn it. I'm going to get on their level. I'm going to get feedback. I'm just going to like, I'm going to do it. And so it's kind of like both, where it's like, hell yeah, my dream job, or also like, holy shit, I'm under so much pressure mentally. I hope I can do this. um and so that's kind of like, we're coming back to like, asking questions and talking with your peers and not being afraid to not know things. So that's like where it becomes really important, is because you don't know anything, and so you have to ask questions, or else it is just going to like dive bomb and explode. So
okay, so fast forward, you that's from like yeah, that's then. This is now. What's the headspace of you now? Like, is it a case of okay, you're in like you're comfortable in where you're at, and it's like you not go through the motions, but like okay, you have your rhythm, your work rhythm, or like what's the headspace like now?
very different. I actually feel very comfortable, and
Mhm,
I am finally able to work by myself without having to ask any questions. And I know, like, if I get some sort of like technical problem or error or whatever, or crash, I know how to handle it by myself.
mhm.
And so I feel I've been at Sony Santa Monica for almost like a year and a half now, and it there has been like a lot of learning throughout that. And so now I finally feel comfortable enough to um, just be by myself and have feedback every so often on just like art wise. Um,
Mhm.
and now if there is something that comes up, I know who to talk to, I know who to ask, and I'm even now able to like help other people who are just starting if they're having problems. And so it's really weird. Whereas like not even too long ago, I had no idea what I was doing. To I now feel like I can help others get through it. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think that you know what that moment you described the bit where you go from I need to look to somebody to help me fix a problem to I could just have a conversation with my lead or my line manager about art. Like when my lead talks to me now, it's not a okay, do you know how to fix this or do you need someone to get someone to help you?
Mhm.
It's okay, here's the problem, and you have a conversation about how to fix it, and then you go fix it. And like for me, like that moment is where like it's where all the fun is where you go, okay, there is no weird relationship of you know worrying whether I need support or anything like that. It's okay, we're gonna have a conversation as just two artists
Mhm.
and we can just crack on. And for me that's like that's peak game dev for me. That's the happiest moment when you no longer feel like you're the burden on somebody, you're just two
Absolutely.
peers talking.
Yeah, it's definitely not it does not feel good when you feel like you're kind of bugging somebody else and distracting them from their work to
Hmm.
kind of be micromanaged. So like I remember I was maybe a few weeks in, I just like I had to keep bothering my coworker about like little things, and I was just like, man, I really hate doing this to you, and I hate like I hate pulling you away. And so then that's when I was like, I really need to get this down so that I can just like be and let them be and
Hmm.
make art. And so now, yeah, it is very refreshing to just like not have those technical issues and talk about them and like try and like figure them out. Whereas like I can do that on my own now and we can just talk about the art.
I think that's Ivana, this has been an absolute. I think that's a pretty perfect place to lead off. We've sort of started at the beginning, and we've got all the way through, and we're here.
Mhm.
Um, it's been an absolute. I'm really glad I got you on. This has been an absolute pleasure, and I've learned actually quite a lot. It's actually quite insightful. Um, everybody listening, please remember, like, follow, share, subscribe. The more people that see this podcast and hear this podcast, the more they get to learn from some of the stuff that people like Ivana have to share. But we're gonna wrap up. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having
And
me.
I'll catch everyone next week.